The University of Central Florida's Arboretum Boardwalk Park, located in East Orlando, offers solace in the midst of the hustle and bustle of university and city life as one of the few green spaces in the area. This small 4-acre piece of land that lies in the middle of UCF's 1,415-acre campus has deviated from its historical conditions. The construction of Gemini Boulevard separated a once continuous system into two segments that are now referred to as the UCF Arboretum Boardwalk Park and the UCF Natural Lands. Man-made elevation changes, fragmentation, intentional planting of invasive species for educational purposes, and overall disruption of the park have contributed to the park's degradation. While the natural lands are much larger, the location of the Boardwalk Park is more advantageous to offer services to students and stakeholders due to its proximity to classrooms. UCF Arboretum founder Henry Whittier saw the potential for the space to offer health, cultural, and educational benefits to visitors. We believe that a restored version of the space could act as an educational hub as well as offer health and social benefits as a transitional area from the urban landscape of campus to the natural lands.
So at the bottom left-hand side of the poster is a visualization of the Arboretum Boardwalk area divided into 6 units for our study. The areas marked in orange are higher elevation, more xeric portions of the site, while the areas marked in blue are the lower lying, more hydric portions. Our study plots are indicated by the red markers along the site. For our methods as a team, we began by walking along the borders and paths of the site, randomly tossing our quadrat as we all went along. And within each quadrat, we measured the percent coverage of the plant types present, and an 11-meter radius was created around each plot. And within that radius, we measured the percent coverage of different plant species present. Tree types and DBH were also measured, and any observed instances of exotic or nuisance species were recorded.
One of the most important parts of our project was stakeholder engagement. So we conducted an electronic survey that was sent out to students. We used UCF Qualtrics, which is usually used for surveys throughout UCF, and then we forwarded it to each of the deans of each college, who then forwarded it on to their respective faculty, staff, and students. So we were able to get a large array of answers, and we also posted it in the UCF subreddit, which is a website, so we could have more like online participation for students that wouldn't have gotten it through their emails. And then we also would send it within our individual organizations, anything that we were a part of. To create the questions, we use open-ended questions as well as a prioritization questions. So 1 through 10 were different options that we were able to do with the space that we already have thought of, and they were asked to prioritize them with a little scale bar, and they were able to choose 1 through 10 on the priority list. And this went for like study space, research, meeting space for organizations, and so on. And then at the end, we asked how often students currently visit the Arboretum and if they believe that they would visit the Arboretum more if we were to restore it. And the overall answer was yes, that students would visit more. And right now there's just a need for more education of what exactly the Arboretum provides and where it is. And then the last question was any suggestions that students had that they wanted to mention that wasn't previously mentioned in any of the answers. This was to be able to mimic more of a town hall where students be able to answer freely and give any sort of suggestions that they wanted to. Overall, students just wanted to see more of an aesthetically pleasing garden, someplace that they would be able to go and just enjoy visually. So that is very important when we take it into account in our restoration plan. We also conducted a literature review of 7 different sources. What stuck out to us most was from Ohio State University, because they focus largely on taking out invasive species, which is why we did our vegetation monitoring, is trying to remove the invasive species from the urban park. And they also used a water management system that would greatly help us connect the two spaces that were two spaces of land that were divided when Gemini Boulevard was built. So this proved to be incredibly useful for us as well.
For our results, we found it best to divide our results into 4 distinct areas: an upland region that were further away from the trails and thus had less maintenance, lowland areas also far from the trail, a transitional or ecotone area that happened to be near the trail, and lastly plots that were close to the trails but excluded this ecotone region. Our graphs show the percentage of each category described in the methods, which were monitored in our square meter plots from each section. Each of the graphs differ from each other in unique ways, however they all have a relatively high percentage of nuisance and exotics, reaching almost 25% at most in low elevation plots away from the trail. One of the most notable is the difference in vegetation between the upland and low elevation plots away from the trails. In the upland plots, 23.3% of the observed species were woody vegetation less than 1 meter, compared to only 8.1% in lowland areas. Having a higher percentage of short woody vegetation is characteristic of the xeric area in the natural land, which the boardwalk was originally a part of. The lower percentage of woody vegetation less than 1 meter is made up for in the lowland areas away from the trail by a high percentage of forbs and herbs of 25.3% compared to 12.2% in the upland plots. Another key observation is the ecotone graph, which has more even pie slices than all other graphs as well as a complete absence of grasses in the plots that we monitored. Woody vegetation less than 1 meter and between 1 to 2 meters are similar to low elevation plots away from the trail, but the ecotone region has the highest percentage of canopy trees. All of these categories are close in percentage, unlike the other graphs.
The results of our vegetation monitoring did reveal that there was a greater proportion of nuisance or exotic species than we had expected to find in the site. However, other than this, the results largely supported what we anticipated, which was to find one distinctly xeric area located in the upland zone of the site, and one distinctly hydric area located in the lowland portion of the site, as well as an ecotone, a transitional area between the two, where we found not only a combination of the species found in either the xeric or the hydric portion, but also vegetation that was thriving uniquely in that area and was not found otherwise throughout the site. The netted pawpaw, shown in the leftmost photo in our discussion section, was found growing in the xeric portion of our site, the northmost portion, and to our team it is one of the greatest testaments of the eccentric ecological, topographic, and hydrologic character of our site. Given that the pawpaw was found growing only in this northmost and this subsequently more xeric part of our site, we believe that it shows how these small elevation changes that occurred between that upland area and that lowland hydric area, although they were pretty imperceptible when looking at the site or when walking through it, they were enough to create two very separate vegetation compositions, and this is evidence that those incremental elevation changes in Florida, which are much less readily observable than elevation changes in other states, other more mountainous regions, for example, they are still major drivers of different ecosystems, not only in the context of our study site, but throughout the state. This affirmation is a wonderful opportunity for expanding public education about the diversity of Florida's ecosystems, as well as the need to preserve our upland sandhills throughout the state. As we all know, these historically dry, high areas have been among the first to be lost to commercial development, and in the continuously and rapidly urbanizing landscape of UCF, public advocacy for these systems, which can be garnered through public education and engagement, is vital. Moreover, several of the species that we revealed during vegetation monitoring were found to be rare natives or endemic, including the Chapman's rhododendron and the toothed rain orchid, also shown in our discussion section. With proper maintenance and renewal, these unique vegetation features, plus the planted horticultural varieties within the site, would also be excellent opportunities for educational and recreational functions, such as those offered by a botanical garden. Restoration and upkeep of these botanical features would serve a dual purpose of serving survey respondents who reported an interest in maintained gardens and landscapes, and promoting the enhancement of habitat for plants that are rare or endemic.
It is nearly impossible to separate a human-impacted landscape such as the Arboretum Boardwalk Park from the urban context. This space is not only where UCF students can learn about the intricacies of Florida ecosystems, but is also one of the few green spaces in the area, which lies in the center of ever-growing East Orlando. Acknowledgement that the area is within danger of falling victim to more urban development is a vital step in moving towards efforts to preserve it. Increasing the aesthetic appeal of the area will not only promote healthy ecological functionality, but will also help provide community support through increased visitation. Part of increasing the aesthetic appeal will be addressing the abundance of invasive species in the park. These species must be removed to contribute towards the park's beautification and ecological functionality. However, a distinction must be made between invasive species and non-native species in the park. While not native, exotic species could contribute towards beautification efforts without compromising the area's ecological integrity. Exotic species can also assist in providing educational materials demonstrating the importance of elevation changes in Florida in providing diverse ecosystems. In addition, support from the community is necessary to ensure that the area is monitored and maintained, which takes a lot of time and resources. To encourage involvement, insights gathered from stakeholders through the distribution of a campus-wide survey should be incorporated in the restoration plan. We found that, along with the survey, the most readily actionable aspect of our project includes increasing public education of the area using interpretive signage. We see this project as a starting point of a long and involved conversation regarding a place on campus that has cultural, educational, social, and ecological value.